We'll get started right now because it's 5 after. Welcome everybody to the Business of Collegiate Sport Sustainability webinar. This is part of the Green Sports Alliance Collegiate webinar series as part of our brand new collegiate membership tiers. If you want to know all about what's happening with the Green Sports Alliance, collegiate, not collegiate, whatever we've got going on, the QR code on the slide right now is a link to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay informed of everything that we're going to be doing. Couple pieces of housekeeping to get started. Like I've mentioned a couple times, if you could please in your name tag put what organization or institution you're with. It's great information for us to have. This session will be recorded, so you should have already gotten that prompt when you signed in. And then if you have any questions as we go throughout this conversation, please feel free to put them in the chat. Use whatever thumbs up, heart emoji if someone else has asked a question that you've got on your mind as well. And then towards the end, when we have time for Q&A, we will use that information to pick which questions that we ask. If we don't get to your question or we don't cover something that you wanted to know about, feel free to email me and I can get you an answer to your question after the webinar. Sound good? All right, so hi, everybody. Should have also started with, I'm Lauren Lichterman. I'm the Collegiate Specialist for the Green Sports Alliance. Very excited to be bringing this conversation to everyone today. I know we've got a mix in the room of athletic staff, campus staff. I think we've got some students and student athletes in here. We've also got a lot of corporations, different organizations in here. And probably at some point or another, a good chunk of people in this room have been told that sustainability, either we want to do sustainability or we don't know where to start, or how do we pay for that, or what do resources look like? And we wanted to bring this conversation to you because we all know that sustainability is important and can be happening within collegiate athletics, but how we get there can be a hurdle to jump through. And oftentimes the hurdle that we hear is financial resources. And we wanted to bring this conversation to you today to discuss how those financial resources flow within an athletic department, how things get prioritized, where money might be found so that you can pay for the initiatives that we want to get off the ground. So I will let each of our speakers introduce themselves, and then we will get into a little bit of discussion. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we will have time for questions at the end. Sound good? We will kick it off with Kelly Wellman. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hey folks, and Lauren, thanks for having me here today. I'm Kelly Wellman. I'm the director in the Office of Sustainability at Texas A&M University. Texas A&M is the largest public university in the U.S. Our current enrollment, it sits right around 75,000 students. And physically, our campus is 5,500 acres, just over 31 million gross square feet. I just say that so you can get kind of a sense of scope and scale for the campus. In my office, we basically work with the different campus stakeholders to, number one, do assessment of the institution. How sustainable are we being? Working with students through internship opportunities, and then managing something called the Aggie Green Fund, which is a mechanism to empower students, faculty, and staff to bring about different sustainability type changes to the campus. So I think that's probably enough for high level.
All right, Rob, how about you introduce yourself next?
Yeah, my name is Rob Heil. I'm a Senior Associate Athletic Director here for Kansas State Athletics. And Lauren, again, thanks for having me as well. Looking forward to visiting with you all. But my job is to oversee all fundraising initiatives for K-State Athletics. We have 16 varsity teams, and we raise those funds through annual dollars tied to tickets or major gifts, and work with our university foundation to also drive revenue and philanthropic giving for the campus as well.
Thank you, Rob. Kicking it to Tara.
Hello, everybody. Also great to be here. It's good to see some familiar faces in the Zoom room. I work with PlayFly Sports, and we're a media tech company that works with a lot of colleges and pro teams. We work with every NBA, MLB, and NHL team on their media, but then we have about 35 college properties that we work with on their multimedia rights. We also work with high school associations as well. My job is that I'm on our business development team looking for new opportunities with different colleges. That's where I specialize. But in my former life, I did a lot of time and years doing sponsorship sales at the University of Texas. So good to be here.
Thank you, Tara. And last but not least, Eric George.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Eric George. I'm the Assistant Vice President and Deputy Athletic Director here at Rice. And previously, I've been here for about a month. Previously was at Mississippi State as the CFO there, and Clemson before that. So have kind of bounced around the country in athletics. I actually got my start in the corporate side. I did international tax at Deloitte before getting into athletics. So this is great to be here. Appreciate you guys having me, and look forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. Stop that share so we can see everyone's faces. So to kick off our conversation, Kelly, you mentioned it a little bit, but can you describe a little bit more about what is the Green Fund, how many schools have them, like what you can use them for? Just give a little bit more detail about those funding opportunities that might present themselves on campus.
I can't say for certain how many green funds exist out there. When I was doing a little bit of digging, there's definitely well over 65. So, across the U.S., a green fund can come in many shapes and sizes. So for us, it is a pool of money that comes from student fees, and it's a student-led decision initiative, and they get to decide where are funds for projects that get applied for distributed to the campus. You can have different types of access to funds. For instance, some campuses, if you may not have a green fund, maybe you have a revolving loan fund of some sort that would target cost savings or energy type initiatives. So it could be called a revolving loan fund. It could be called a sustainability fund. It could be called a green fund. I just say that for those who are maybe newer to the space or trying to figure out if those things exist, to not keep yourself limited to something as a green fund. And even climate action funds are also something that are a lot more common. I think you asked me something else in there, Lauren. How can you use those funds? And I don't know if you want to get too deep into specifics or wait for some Q&A here, but because students are often involved in our projects for our campus, their ideas matter. In fact, I know Lauren, not only from the sustainability office space, but when she came to grad school here, and was able to connect her with our athletics team, because I knew our athletics team needed resources to help work on a sustainability master plan. So students can actually use these dollars for funding maybe some of their graduate work, or they can use, the campus can use dollars for actually installing infrastructure into their facility. So there's a lot of different ways that you could use a fund based on how it's set up on your own campus.
I'd be curious, quick question for the group. If you're at an institution, can you maybe throw up an emoji or not necessarily hand raise, but if you have a green fund or a climate action fund or revolving loan on your campus, might be good for anyone else who's at your institution in the audience, and we'll kind of let that go. Michigan State's got them. I can't. USC. I'm having a little trouble actually seeing everyone's name tag, so never mind that question. You see a lot of names, not a lot of institutions. You can throw it in the chat if you've got a green fund at yours. Like Kelly said, I received a green fund at Texas A&M, which really helped the athletic department work on their sustainability initiatives. That specific green fund was to fund my graduate position. There have been other green funds I know that fund, like she said, specific initiatives. And I had a question in my head about this. I'm curious if there's, if you can speak a little bit more to how do the students decide what green funds get approved or grants get approved and what don't? Is there a certain stipulation that they need to cover?
The way ours is set up, it was actually based off of a state law, and it's kind of been slightly adapted since that law is off the books now. But, it has to impact our physical campus. That's one of the criteria. And there needs to be, an environmental impact, although we've shifted that 2 years ago so that it's more sustainable impact, and that kind of broadened the scope. And, we're looking for things that, if you're focused only on return on investment, and that is one of our metrics, it's not the only metric. Sometimes these projects don't have a really quick ROI. So to kind of balance that out, they're looking at things that engage the campus, that could be visible, that have an obvious education and outreach component. So there's an entire matrix that's being evaluated when a grant application comes in. And honestly, from year to year, if you have a couple $100,000 pool of money, it really depends how many other competitive applicants are in that pool too. We might be able to fund all projects, or we might only be able to fund 25% of the project. So there's a little bit of luck that factors in, at least for our campus.
Gotcha. And I think a lot of green fund projects really can be considered like seed money or Kickstarter money.
Absolutely. I will say that, when projects get proposed to us as a pilot or something that's very clear start and beginning, that does help determine whether it looks like it's going to have a long-term impact. And those tend to be viewed a lot more favorably as to something that's just more abstract than that. So seed money is always what I've noticed is the seed money for pilots tends to be much better received, at least here on our campus.
Okay. And that's going to segue us into once you get seed money and prove for a year or whatever duration of time that, proof of concept for whatever your initiative is, how do you continue funding that in the long term? And so I will kick this to Eric and having his operations CFO hat on to talk through how does the money work in athletics, cost and revenue, how are the priorities, and why doesn't athletics have all the money in the world to do anything and everything they want to do? Big question.
Yeah. Thanks, Lauren. Contrary to popular belief, athletics does not have an unlimited budget and unlimited money trees growing outside. So just like any other unit on campus, we have to be conscious of what we're spending and how we're operating. So there are really kind of two sets of schools within college athletics. A smaller group and kind of probably more well-known are those that are self-sufficient, that are generating enough revenue from their ticket sales, donations, TV revenue to fund their operations of the department. And then the other group are the ones that have to have some sort of assistance from campus, whether that be student fees, subsidy. The form and the format of that can vary, but really they're not self-sustaining. They can't operate without that support. So regardless of which of the two buckets your institution may fall in, at the end of the day, they're operating with everything that they can get their hands on. So carving out something for a new initiative, whether that be something like we're talking about today, or they need to start paying money for some sort of court case, or whether it be student athletes becoming employees in the future, whatever it is, that's going to have to be either new money that you find, or it's going to have to be a reduction of some current operation. So even within my own family, have plenty of people that think that, we'll just go to athletics. They have money, they can pay for it. You guys are just rolling it in. But that's not the case. When I was at Clemson, we actually, the first year I was there, we went to the college football playoff, played in the championship game against Alabama, and we lost $3 million. So that was very eye-opening, and something we had to present to the board just to say, hey, there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of exposure and publicity that we got from this, but financially speaking, we lost money on this endeavor. So I think that's just something to keep in mind across campus of whenever you want athletics to be a partner, we're certainly here and want to be part of campus, want to help and want to play our role, but there's not just a pool of money that we have sitting aside to fund miscellaneous projects.
Yeah. So all very helpful information. When we are wondering about how priorities are set, can you dig a little bit into what takes that top priority? Like student athletes are, I imagine, a big chunk of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think you may get slightly different answers at each institution, but really, like you said, student athletes are the first and foremost the priority. So what can you do to take care of them, to provide them with the resources to be successful in the classroom and their field of competition? And then the next group are the people, and making sure that you've got support staff. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, paying invoices and getting academic support and all those staff members. And then ultimately, the last part is what directly impacts your ability to be successful on the field. All right, so recruiting is something that is going to help you win games. Having the equipment and the meals and the nutrition and all that to compete at the highest level, those are going to be the priorities. And then as you get further down with whatever's left, that's kind of your ancillary stuff that you may do to update office space for the business office, or buy new computers, or whatever that may be. That really takes a backseat to doing whatever you can to put the student athletes and your teams in the best position to be successful and to win championships.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, so my background is working in collegiate athletics before I was at the Green Sports Alliance, and one of my coworkers once told me something that at the time I was like, this is a little harsh, but then it really helped me reframe and seek out ways to instill sustainability in a sustainable way. He said, Lauren, the game's going to happen regardless of if you recycle or not. And that really helped. It seems rude, and it's like, well, why wouldn't you recycle? But that really did help me think like, okay, you're right. Like the game, that's how the priorities are set, is like, what do we need to do to make the game happen? Because there's so many other things going on. It's not just sustainability. I worked with very wonderful people. It felt harsh at the time, but it was what I needed to hear. So don't think I worked with any people who were like jerks or anything. Wonderful, wonderful help, because then it helped me think like, again, reframe, reset, let me try and clear this hurdle differently rather than saying business office, business office, business office, why don't you have these funds? And now I'm going to cue in Tara, because as Eric mentioned, the ways to approach this, how can you increase revenue or decrease cost? And one way to increase revenue and potentially pay for sustainability would be through your sponsorships and your partnerships folks. So Tara, can you talk a little bit about your experience with sponsorships in general and sustainability sponsorship specifically?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So, some of you, I think, have worked a lot on sponsorship and sustainability, and some people are like, well, don't even know where to start. So there's a wide range in there. The most important thing, I think, in college is to have a lot of communication with your sponsorship team, and to be able to tell them, like, this is what we're trying to do. These are the programs we're trying to start up, and these are the different pieces that we think are important for it. So maybe in athletic department, that means, okay, we need to find a company that can be our partner in the collection process, and then the processing of recycling, composting, etc. And so you're looking for a corporate brand to align with you there. And sometimes that's cash spend that they're able to contribute to a program because they see the benefit of their brand being aligned with your program, or it can be in services and products that you need to do your operation. A media company might be really helpful to get the word out, to do PR. And so you want to align with them. Again, that might be cash, or it could be trade with their airtime. But then there are other companies that have initiatives within their own corporate brand that align with sustainability. And they just want to, be part of programs that are on a similar mission. And it helps their brand look good by associating with a university that has some of the similar things. So things that were always helpful to me was hearing from the athletic department, like, we want to be zero waste by X date, or we want to compost this much, or we're going to, change our concession stand products to be, compostable, sustainable in different ways, and this and this and this. And when we were able to share that with different brands, they really were able to understand and then know what they were really aligning with. Because at the end of the day, when you're selling a sponsorship, you're trying to help them solve their own problems. And sometimes that's getting more people to go into their door. Sometimes it's making their brand more recognizable, but sometimes it's to help their PR initiatives or to solve some other things. And so you're just trying to have those conversations, share the mission of the university, and trying to find corporate dollars that will then support it.
Yeah. I want to kick the same question to Rob, and then we'll come back maybe for some more specific examples, Tara. So Rob, again, on the revenue generation, actually roll back. Rob, what is a day in the life of a development officer like? How does building relationships work for you? Just how is your life?
Well, there's several different parts to a athletics fundraising office, and each development office is different on different, or they're set up differently on different campuses. Some may be internal with an athletics department, some may be part of a university development department, or some may be completely separate, like a 12th Man Foundation separate. Here at K-State, we're part of the athletics department. But we're broken up into a major gifts team, an annual fund team, and then some athletic departments may have a stewardship and events type team, or a development operations like gift processing, and just kind of some prospecting, customer relation, software management type things that you have to have. But when it comes to philanthropic fundraising, though, a lot of it has to do with just building those relationships, being out, going to see people who are passionate about your university, the athletics department, and building that relationship, finding their passions of what they love about your institution, whether it be athletics, business school, or sustainability that you have going on your campus, or that you're trying to get going. And, getting to know them, like you would anybody else, and build that relationship, build that trust. And it takes some time. I think it's harder on the academic side of things because you don't see those alums and donors that often. And on the athletic side of the house, we see our alumni and donors maybe a couple times a week, depending on the athletic events that are going on. But it's really getting out and having the courage to ask them once you've built that trust for a gift. People who have wealth, they are asked for money a lot, so they know why they're there. They know why you're there. They know what you do. So it may be uncomfortable at first, but people, again, who have wealth have been asked by their church, their hospital, their community organizations, like they know what people are coming for when you go see them.
So to that end, as far as donations related to sustainability initiatives, is that something that you've encountered before? If you haven't encountered it before, what would be the process to get to something like that? Like I've told you, in my mind, I'm like, well, why wouldn't there just be a $1 donation to a sustainability fund to an athletics department every time you buy a ticket? It is certainly not that simple, but can you talk about why it's not that simple?
Yeah, I mean, I have not come across. We haven't built anything in our campaigns related to sustainability, or done that within our athletics department yet. Anyway, it is something that you can build in. I think if you are trying to get that going with athletics or on your campus, you have to find those alums and donors who are interested in that and go to them and talk to them about it. If you're building facilities on campus or athletics facilities on campus, build those sustainability things into the project and go to those donors and get them involved in supporting the project in that way. Like I know, there's a lot of professional venues that, is it Climate Change Arena, I think in Seattle, very related to sustainability and how they built that and all the little bells and whistles that went into that. But yeah, I mean, I think you can be creative with it. And I think the biggest thing is just going to your athletic department on your campus and going to build that relationship with them and going to ask them, like, how can we be involved? How can we, drive sustainability for you? And they may not be receptive to it at first, or they may not have anything for you really to be a part of quite yet, but just putting that bug in their ear so that at least maybe down the road, they'll come to you and want to work together on something, but don't be afraid to go approach them on it.
Okay. So I know we talked last week in our prep call about how to get that foot in the door. what should that approach be to an athletic department to get them interested in hearing what you have to say about sustainability? So question to Eric or Rob, what would make you want to listen to that? Because I imagine some of the people on this call have been like, we've been trying to talk to our athletics department, but we're not sure who to go to. We're not sure what to start with or how to get them interested. Do you have any advice for that?
Again, don't be afraid to reach out, but athletic departments, we're hit up a lot with things and about somebody wanting something. So I think if you can look at it as, a win-win situation, something for you and something that's also going to benefit the department, you're going to have a lot more success in trying to get something done.
Yep, I completely agree. I think the number of requests of people putting their hand out to just have athletics do something for them. Oh, sorry, my lights just went off. I'm having all kinds of technical
lights at Rice.
I'm having all kinds of technical. Yeah, we have there we go. See, we're green over here. We have our lights on timers, and I haven't moved in a while. But no, like Rob was saying, so many people reach out. So how can you partner with us? How can it be something that's mutually beneficial instead of just asking athletics to support it financially or allow us to use our facilities or whatever the case may be? How can both sides work together to come up with something that's for the good of the university, for the good of the community, for the good of the country?
And actually, I'm going to kick that to Kelly as well to see, do you have a real life example of when you got your foot in the door with an athletic department? What did you say and how did that go?
Well, Rob was talking about building relationships, and I think really ultimately sustainability is 100% about building relationships. We're not going to have a sustainable world if we don't connect with people, and that applies in all of our different professional spaces. Very fortunate here because, it was reaching out to folks in athletics to say, can you be part of the campus institutional master planning process? We knew that as an institution, when we were doing this, we wanted to make sure that athletics was visible. And the reason for that is people are very passionate about their sports here at Texas, all the sports, but of course, football being the big flagship there. And, met a few folks who did have an interest, and we kind of targeted really the more operational aspects because, if athletics is got to be very judicious with their funding, and everyone thinks that they've just got these endless vast pools of money, but they're paying their own bills. So running an efficient stadium or arena or sports venue means that if you can cut energy costs, then you are paying a lower utility bill. So you have a very direct relationship there and have kind of a common win-win. You can reduce energy, reduce greenhouse gases, and cut costs for athletics. So that's kind of starting at that approach. And so, we ultimately built a very long, slow relationship with a couple of folks, and it took us 6 or 7 years, but we got where we wanted to be. And that is basically going from an institutional sustainability plan to having more conversations around building a plan for athletics itself that was encompassing for them to become the drivers of their own kind of destiny and future. So again, relationship building is key to that, and understanding what is beneficial to athletics, what is beneficial to the institution. And while money seems to be an easy answer, it's just as important to think of things as kind of an in-kind contribution. What does that win-win look like? I recognize, from my perspective, the value of leveraging sports for this campus. So, it was being willing to spend quite a bit of my own time trying to provide additional information or be just part of the team, that that you're not asking athletics to do this all on their own. We're here to also support you, whatever that looks like, whether it's some of my time, some of the staff's time, or maybe an institution has access to students, undergraduate students. You can get an awful lot of work done by leveraging the student population on your campus as well, and they're just as excited about it too.
As a former student at A&M, can confirm, very excited about it. But I want to kick it over to Tara to talk through, again, related to that ask of how to get the foot in the door, but as it aligns to assets. How do we get that foot in the door with finding a sponsor? I guess it's kind of like this chicken and the egg, right? Like we want to have an asset to go find a sponsor to sponsor, but we can't necessarily create something unless we have some Kickstarter money, which again might be green fund money. But if you don't have a green fund on your campus, or the project you have wouldn't align with the green fund stipulations, and Tara, what could that look like? And can you provide some examples of specific sustainability sponsorships you've been able to facilitate?
There's some like old school ones are, you can put logos on the collection bins that, in front of the fans, because it's all about the eyeballs for sponsors. They're looking for how many impressions can we get with this spend that we're going to do with our cash. So it's logos on things, and, aligning with the sustainability statement, and if their logo can be aligned with that, then that's great. So you can put that on the collection materials. Maybe you design a cup that's 100% recyclable that's sold at the concession stand, or can be composted. Then maybe there's things with your signage on your video board when you're trying to do messaging to encourage your fans to participate in your program. You include the corporate logos in that. Sometimes it's, maybe you do a contest with your students so that you can get more reach across campus. And so you're trying to have them help you design some programs. And then if the sponsors can sponsor that, then that gets them in front of the student body. You kind of just go through the whole program and say, okay, does this make sense to align a sponsor brand to, and how many impressions can we give them for this? It sounds kind of tedious, but that is really what they pay attention to. And they want to know, well, how many people are going to see this? And how are you promoting it? So it does goes both ways. But I mentioned earlier, like if you can find a media company, and that can be a local TV station, and say, okay, well, can you give us 15-second vignettes on your evening news that talk about sustainability? That does huge reach, and for your program to just further amplify. And that means a lot for your program to sponsors too, because it shows that the universities are trying to do it as well. And it's not just like trying to sell an ad or a sign or a logo on something.
Yeah. Thank you. That's super helpful. And so kind of to sum up what I'm hearing, the relationship building and the time, you say tedious, and we've all talked about relationships, but the relationship building and the way to make these assets is not going to be something that happens overnight. I know a lot of times we're like, well, this just makes sense. Let's go. We've got this right here. But to build that relationship, to convince the powers that be that this is something that you should pursue, can take a really long time. So I want to encourage everybody to start building those relationships now, again, without a direct ask. Just, hey, this is what we're doing on campus. So if you're an Office of Sustainability, here are the campus goals. Here's our climate action plan. Here's our sustainability plan. If you're within athletics, trying to figure out what assets could be, you're trying to find partners, go talk to your sustainability folks, see how what athletics is doing could align with things on campus. You've probably got a sustainability office. You may have a utilities and energy office, zero waste office, what have you, and try and find those collaborations to start. And then you can go and find funding for them. But if you don't have the relationship built, then they're not going to think about you when it comes time to make decisions. Does that feel like I've summed up some amount of what's been said? Start early, start now. Just find your people and say, hi, I exist, right? And tell me more about what you do, because then maybe we can find ways within existing operations to clear the hurdles, which I know we don't all have a million hours in the day. Wouldn't that be lovely? Time is precious for everybody. But that's something that I think could help figuring out how to get started and give direction to something. Couple other questions. I know it was on our list, and I think someone put it in the chat related to NIL. And we're still trying to understand exactly how NIL impact is going to be and what that can mean for sustainability. And that doesn't necessarily mean for operations, might mean just for the student. And I'll just kick this to Eric. What would you like to say about NIL and sustainability potential?
Yeah, it's a good question. In terms of how it impacts the funds the athletic department can spend, there's an indirect impact, but the schools themselves can't do anything with NIL. So the schools are not paying the players. They're not deciding how much money the student athletes get. That is done separately through a collective or from companies directly. So the indirect impact to athletic departments is you potentially have some donors who used to give to the development officer, the fundraising group, to Rob, who are now maybe given to a collective. So time will tell over the next couple of years how that all plays out. But there could be a decrease in contributions and revenue to the department because folks are choosing to give their money elsewhere for NIL. Where I think there is an opportunity on the sustainability side, especially for the companies that are on this call, is you can strike an NIL deal with a student athlete to represent your company or to talk about the importance of sustainability, or to in some way represent what your company does. And that's an opportunity there to maybe get athletics involved from a different angle, where you're not going straight to the school, to the athletic department, but you're using the student athletes and the platforms that they have on social media or elsewhere to draw attention to the cause or to your company specifically.
Yeah, I'd agree with Eric too on that. Just to give you an example, because as Eric said, the donors are given to collectives and maybe not to us anymore. I mean, we had about $2 million that our collective raised last year. And I mean, that could have been money that came to us as an athletics department. So it was a hit to us, but I mean, we still did fine. But again, that's money that could have come to us instead. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, like Eric said too, having student athletes promote sustainability, or if a donor really wants to help with a collective, have them push, a sustainability program that they're passionate about.
Yeah, and I think we're all still trying to best understand NIL impacts, this, athletic staff, student athletes, everybody, but future does feel like there's potential in the future for that. I want to go back to just a few more. We're going to start opening it for questions. If you've got any, please throw it in the chat. But talking through again that foot in the door and that kind of collateral people can provide as you're building a relationship. Again, not an ask like we need money from you or we need this, but more just what would resonate with you, athletic staff and MMRs, on what is sustainability. If the level of knowledge, I'm working with another group that talks about the concept of zero waste. Not everyone knows what that is, and sustainability minded folks, that's their basic, they live and breathe that every day. But how do you approach just what is sustainability? What would be kind of a good, piece of collateral or something to talk to you about? Because so often, I'm asking a very long-winded question. So often I think sustainability is perceived as this money and time suck, and it's just going to be so much work, but really it's not that. So how would that foot in the door piece, that ask, look like? Is there a document that they could send, or something that would kind of get the wheels turning, or say, yes, I'd be interested in hearing more about that?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little different based on who you're approaching with it. Sending a slide deck to an athletic director probably isn't going to gain much traction. So your audience will dictate that. But I think the education piece is important. There's a time and energy component to athletics, but how can you offset that? What's the benefit to the department? What's the benefit to the fans? If there's something that will make the fan experience better, that's a great selling point. And I know I've seen a couple of populist folks on here and some other groups, but as schools are looking at doing master plans, at looking at building new facilities, having those groups insert ideas in, say, hey, by doing this, you can reduce your HVAC bill. By doing this, you can create other benefits, and there's a variety of a lot of these benefits come in different shapes and forms, but the education part is important, not just for what exactly it'll do for this company or for the environment, but also how it will help the department directly, so that they can be more willing to be engaged in it.
because that it's the right thing to do is not necessarily going to be the selling point, because a lot of things are the right thing to do, as harsh as that sounds. The definition of right and what direction to head can be, challenging to, or not challenging. Kids have different definitions for different people.
Exactly. And everyone, I mean, it's no different in your jobs. Everybody is probably their plate is overflowing, that, you know, they've got more work than they can handle. So there's not a huge willingness to just jump into new projects unless there's a benefit there. But how you educate that, to your point, Lauren, I think it comes in different forms depending on who the audience is.
Rob, Tara, anything on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking that sometimes when you're looking for partners, the cash can really help, right? If they're willing to spend some money to sponsor your sustainability efforts. And I would just say that sometimes your first instinct might be to run away from companies that might have obvious problems with sustainability, like maybe they have high emissions, or maybe they have a history, maybe they've had reports in the media about things that are not good about what they do with sustainability. But actually, you might be surprised a lot of times that those companies are doing some of the best work behind the scenes on changing things and changing their operations. And so you can be a huge service to them by partnering with them to be able to, I mean, it helps them by helping to promote what they're doing that's good for the community, but also they often have deep pocketbooks that can really help your programs. And I would just say, you know, keep an open mind when you're talking to possible corporate partners, because they might be different than what you think, who you think they are.
Like potentially which department out of that corporate office is reaching out to you. Maybe it's the HR office or something, and their interest really lies in recruitment to find people who can do this new, better work versus maybe what their core business was.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it might be, you know, the operations people at an oil company or a refinery, and they've been charged with, you know, we're getting killed on, you know, our emissions. So you got to figure out a plan to help that. And so, you know, and they're trying to also hire people from your university. And so if they can couple some of those things together with recruiting efforts and also being able to speak to how they're changing, you know, their operation, you know, you need to kind of learn how companies work, because they're all different. Sometimes it will be HR people, sometimes it'll be advertising people, sometimes it'll be the operations people. Sometimes you might talk to the president, because they're the one that has to really change the image of the company.
Yeah. I'm sure for the sustainability folks on this call, hearing the word refinery made you twitch a little bit, but I think that, and the hesitation on greenwashing, right? Like you want to have authentic partnerships that aren't going to be perceived as greenwashing. And I think that's in how you communicate, how authentic, how true you are to that communication, and figuring out what that positioning might be. Like, sure, you may not want an oil and gas company to be the lead partner on your sustainability initiative. That might be a little challenging to communicate, but I think that there might be a way to work with them in a smaller way to start to affect change in those areas, which I'm gonna, like, all the sustainability people on this call are gonna be like, what are you saying? But having been at this intersection of, like, sometimes you just need money to do the things and maybe take the money to put them out of business, sort of thing, or to affect change within their operation in the direction we want to head. Okay, sorry, soapbox there. We've got some questions coming in, so I'm going to read through those and see what we have time to answer. But I want to kick back to the group to talk through, while I'm reading through these, how students can help get that foot in the door or help impact decisions within your athletics department. And that's open to anyone while I read these amazing questions we're getting.
Something I thought of and related to like student athletes and getting involved with sustainability is most athletic departments have a group called SAAC. It's SAAC, Student Athlete Advisory Council. And they do a lot of community service type initiatives and things. And that would be a good way to get your foot in the door with an athletics department, is to reach out to your SAAC group. They usually have a SAAC executive committee, and then there's a SAAC committee on each conference, and then also at the NCAA level. So if you can get some of your student athletes involved in what you're trying to do, that can be pretty powerful to then hopefully work its way up to the athletic director and build a relationship that way with what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think just to build on that, another group that's really helpful is the university student government, and however that's shaped at each school. But having your student body approach the athletic department, having the student government come in and say, hey, this is an initiative we want to try. This is important to us. We'll provide the student labor. We'll provide the support to do this. One thing that I know we did at Mississippi State was we had a student group that would come and collect recyclable items from the stadium after the game, and we would give them some free tickets up in the top corner where there was really no cost to us. We weren't going to sell those anyway, so they got 20, 25 tickets a game, and then in return they would come in and help pick up the stadium by getting some of the items that could be recycled. So that was something that the student government kind of pushed, and we were open and willing to, but they were the ones kind of driving that and providing the plan, the labor, everything, and we've just basically provided the facility for them to use. So as much as you can get student government, like Rob said, SAC, those types of groups leading the charge, I think it helps because they have the ownership of it, but it also, they're doing a lot of the work, and it's not creating a big headache for the athletic department.
Thank you. That is all. I did mostly hear what y'all were saying as I was reading through all of these wonderful comments. Thank you on that. There's a lot of comments in here. I've tagged a couple people who I think one question was specifically about Duke and Lindsay Bachelor's on this call. So connect you guys. Reusables was the question asked. USC has piloted some reusables. So connecting those two. There was a question about sustainability education and developing understanding of their students. Maynard, if I'm understanding this question, I think that's okay. So how can colleges and athletics, physical education and health career programs, which will not include that in this answer as we don't have representatives from those right now, programs due to develop sustainability education and measures in their institutions, alumni, surrounding communities, business ops, and developing understanding of their stakeholder groups and other supportive communities. To me, that goes back to like, that's potentially an asset that you could use and work with a sponsor to communicate. Maybe that's something that you could put together and say, hey, here are all of these tidbits of information. I've seen that happen at other many institutions, that the sponsorship relates to like a sustainable Saturday fact. Tara, how frequently do you think those come up of like, it's just the asset is a bit of education? And are there partners that are interested in having sponsorships related to that?
Well, I think you have to educate the sponsors sometimes a lot. So there's a lot of education that happens, but also I think that in sustainability, my impression is that you're always educating. You want to raise awareness. That's a big part of why you want to do this. You want to raise awareness and all the good things that come from sustainability efforts. And so it's constant education. And so you want to try and figure out the right messaging so that it gets heard and absorbed, and then it continues the conversation. And so everybody that is involved in your program needs to be part of that messaging and that education.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to get going, but I do think, yeah, it is definitely possible. Sorry, I got a little distracted by seeing all these other amazing questions. Some of these questions, well, some of them are a bit more statements, I think. It may not warrant the group. Let's see, have you incorporated any? There's a question about incorporating recent experiences of climate impacts on the ability of students to compete. That is a great research-related question, and the April webinar in the Collegiate series is going to be in partnership with the Sport Ecology Group, Lily. So make sure you stay tuned for the date of the April webinar, because we're going to talk about things like that.
Yeah, and well, I'm curious from a sponsorship perspective if any of you folks have included that as sort of an urgency factor in your narratives.
Are you talking about the people that buy the sponsorships, or that if you're trying to sell them?
Folks that sponsor, companies themselves. So if you're working with a company to create a sponsorship, have you talked about the importance of, we're building this new building. It's going to allow indoor competition, which is really important because the air quality is dramatically changing. And this will allow our athletes and our events to continue. Some sort of similar, and I'm curious specifically on the sponsorship side, which is, Lauren, why I asked it in this, but I will keep my eye out for the April one too.
I think what you're describing comes up in conversation with development as well as sponsorship, probably, because usually development is heavily involved in any kind of facility upgrades. And so you want to talk about all the benefits and why it's better than the one that you've got and why you need it. And some of those things are because of things like air quality and maybe more bathrooms or maybe better, circulation of all the things. I mean, there's lots of reasons why you want to have a new facility, right? But in sponsorship, we don't tend to, facilities don't always come into play unless it's involving a new activation area that they might be able to sponsor, or there's a natural way that you can do sponsor integration in a facility. And those are really exciting conversations that usually ends up being a bigger spend by a sponsor. And so, but it can be a big impact. And so kind of going back to what Lauren was saying about your sustainability partners, you want to find the right partner for those, where your brands really align on the messaging that you're doing.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about it when we've done projects. Like the one that comes to mind from an athletic standpoint is like field turf and no longer using grass, and like water, you're conserving water, you're not spending a ton on water, using fertilizers, things like that. The other one, when I was working at Texas athletics and at the med school, a lot of the buildings on campus were LEED certified. So, energy efficient and then just, good sustainable building materials and things like that. And talking about that to donors when you're presenting them a project, making them aware of it.
Thank you both.
And I think on that, I'm gonna throw up as people might start to hop off in a second. Thank you everyone for attending today. Really appreciate it. We're not done yet. We've still got a couple more minutes, but if you needed to hop off early, that QR code and that's all my contact information. If you've got any additional questions or want to schedule time to meet with me, please do not hesitate to do so. I am here as the collegiate resource. So let me know if there's anyone else on the Green Sports Alliance team you'd like to chat with. We're happy to chat with anyone at any time. Lily, back to yours real quick. Specifically, I don't know that there's always that tie related to sustainability of the health of the athlete is of the utmost importance to any athletic department, but tying it to a sustainability, I think that line doesn't always get made. With sustainability, folks talk about this a lot, that the definition of sustainability is so ambiguous to some that there's athletic departments are doing a lot in sustainability, but not necessarily tying it under that umbrella. And so that's where this foot in the door, this create a piece of collateral that better explains what sustainability can be, might be another way to get athletics on board, because they're likely already to some degree doing something sustainability. They're doing community impact, they're doing community service. A lot are already recycling, but just making those connections is not quite all the time all the way there. Does anyone else have any final questions? And I don't have to hop off immediately. If anyone wants to stay on and just chit chat, not gonna hold our speakers. Everyone's got their days to go to. But any other last final questions? Either in the chat or just call it out. I know there were some other carbon offsets things that we didn't ask about specifically. So Matt, if you want to stay on, we can chat about that or chat a different time. That's carbon offsets, I think, are a whole other big conversation. And not everyone's quite to measuring their athletic specific footprint yet. And so that might be a question better directed at campus folks, where athletics footprint is counted in the campus footprint. All right. No other questions. Again, I can stay on for about 15 more minutes if anyone wants to chat. Speakers, thank you so much for being here today. Really, really appreciate all of your insights. I hope everyone listening did get something out of this and this was helpful in your next steps in your sustainability and sports journey. Thank you much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you.
Great work.
Hey Lauren, it's Matt Kaufman. How are you?
Hey, Matt, good. How are you? Let's chit chat. Let's talk
Good.
carbon offsets.
Yeah, I just was curious if anyone on the call or maybe in your work with the group, you guys have talked about carbon offsets, interest in athletic departments to understand that and maybe develop an offset program using an offset provider.
Someone's just hopping into the chat right now. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any athletic department that's truly doing like a full-on footprint offset. I know Rob is still on here. Rob, I don't know if you've.
I'm not familiar with one either.
I mean, the costs of that would be fairly high, I would imagine. Like if we're talking about costs for sustainability programs, like as a whole, I would just imagine that, yeah, the offset piece of it would be even more ridiculous.
Well, and depending on where you limit that scope, if you pull in scope 3, which athletic departments are just now starting to figure out how do we measure scope 3. 1 and 2, probably not like too big of a number, but scope 3 is really obviously where the big impact is going to be. And they haven't figured out where to draw the line on that scope yet. And so that's the step that I think a lot of athletic departments are in right now is where do we determine that boundary? And once they figure that out, then I think they might be ready for offsets, but we are encouraging everyone to reduce first. I think some people might have gotten the timing wrong because people are coming in right now. Joey, did you just hop in or did you get kicked out? And Courtney? Let me ask them real quick. Or while they're connecting to audio. Matt, does that help at all? Like, I just think there's not that many trying to do offsets.
Yeah, I haven't come across talked to some pro leagues that are considering doing it. They're actually talking about, adding a small fee to the ticket, calculate their carbon footprint and then add a small fee to the ticket. So they're carbon neutral, essentially for all their events.
Yes, and I think Brad had to hop off. So from the Green Sports Alliance standpoint, and Katie might still be on here, from the Green Sports Alliance team, Brad is our pro memberships person, and I work more with Collegiate, and that's a really big difference we're seeing between the two, where pro, and this is not a knock on pro, it's a little easier for pro to manage some of those data points than it is for Collegiate, the stakeholder, and cut through the red tape, if any, for making something like that happen. Whereas pro is dealing with fewer events and 1 to 2 buildings. Collegiate is working with events all year round, multiple a day, so many venues. That kind of like makes one's head spin right now. And we've also seen where if you're looking at progress on sustainability in sport, most of the pro teams are quite a bit ahead than where Collegiate is. Again, I think it has to do with the different stakeholders and the just like deer in headlights. I don't even know where to start. This is so hard sort of thing. So I think the potential's there, but I think we're a couple years plus down the road. If anyone's really starting to figure out their carbon footprint, I would be looking at the colleges who've been doing this for a really long time. Your Ohio State's, University of Southern California. Duke is new into the sports sustainability game, but they've come in like guns blazing, ready to go. And they have a climate commitment games that they have started as of this past football season. They did field hockey and football. So I think we'll see them, not that it's a competition, but if we'll start to see. Florida had a program that I don't think quite got off the ground called Neutral Gator that had to do with some offsets for installing solar on local housing. I'm not entirely sure, and I don't think it ever completely went full circle. But I do know athletes, yes, Peter, athletes are starting to talk about this. We're seeing it. Eco Athletes is a really great organization, but especially with the insanity that is conference realignment and USC and Stanford going to the ACC, we have seen some athletes starting to talk through like, what is that going to do to their carbon footprint, but also what is that going to do to their health and well-being. So I do think we're getting there. We're just not quite there yet. And that's my very long spiel about it.
Thanks for context on that. It's
I
appreciate
hope that's helpful. And obviously I'm not the end all be all. I just know from the ones I've talked to, I've not talked to every single athletic department in the country. I've talked to a good chunk of them. I'm trying to talk to all of them, but yeah, I would say start like maybe talking to the campus side first. ASHE, which is, are you familiar with ASHE?
No.
So it is, this is the acronym for them. So it's the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And they are another trade organization for colleges and universities at all levels. And they do a report every year called the STARS report. And I would imagine that there's some pieces. I'm not like intimately familiar with all of the details that are put into the STARS report. It's extremely comprehensive. I'm more familiar with the things that athletics rolls up to. But that might be something to look at and see what institutions are doing some carbon footprinting. I'm sure if anywhere is going to have that data, like in a clean or like in a one spot, it would be ASHE.
Great,
Of
thanks.
just on the institution side, not the just athletic specific side.
Very helpful. Thanks so much.
Sure thing. Nice to meet you. And Joey, I saw your chat. We are actually just wrapping up, but this was recorded and will be put on YouTube in a couple of days. Does anyone have any other questions? Want to chit chat about anything at all? Okay. Well, then I'm going to hop off. Thank you so much for your time, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your Monday.